Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 862. My opponent started off with d4. I went knight f6. And he goes bishop to g5, the Trompowsky variation. So this time I remembered to play the knight e4 move. I know about this move, but I often forget to play it. It's a little hard to remember sometimes for me, and because usually the bishop comes out and pins the knight, but in this case there's a pawn there on e7, so there's no pin. And knight e4 is a counterattacking move on the bishop, and it leads to interesting play, so it's a good way to play it. You can see that it's actually the top choice here. So he went bishop to f4. That's the main move. White can also reply with bishop back to h4, or even pawn to h4, which I guess would lead to interesting play. After I take the bishop, he takes back. He's got an open h-file and an advanced g-pawn. Anyway, he went bishop f4, which looks like a normal move, and which is the main move. And then I went d5 here, supporting my knight. c5, you can see, is actually the top choice. But that's a very sharp way to play, and I've gotten into trouble playing that way before. So d5 is just a way to kind of play solidly with black, try and hold on to the center. And so the normal move here is e3. I think that's good for white. f3 can be played, kicking the knight, although that does open up this diagonal to the king, so it's kind of a double-edged move. He chose the third move here, knight d2. And the response to that is normally bishop to f5. This is a very natural move. I don't know why I didn't play it. But anyway, I chose to let him take here. I played knight d7. I guess I didn't want to retreat the knight, but of course defending it is a nice alternative to retreating, as well as just ignoring the exchange possibility. And he went ahead and took, which is correct. And it turns out my pawn here is kind of weak. We saw that in the game. So there's a good position for white. So I probably should not have played this way. I should just do the natural bishop to f5. Anyway, right here, though, he makes a mistake, oddly enough. If he just plays e3, then this is a good position for white. He went with c4 instead. And that seems to be a bit of a mistake, although I didn't exploit it. But here's a way to take advantage of it. It shows some of the tactics of the position. I should play e5 here, and if he takes, which is pretty natural, then I have this check. And you can see the problem with this c5 move is he can no longer block this check with the pawn. He has to bring the bishop back, and then I can round this pawn up with my knight. The chess engine recommends throwing in this move queen e7. Yeah, I guess I need to defend my bishop. So I defend the bishop. I can still round up this pawn when I choose, and I have good development here. So this is a good position for black. So that's what I should play after c4. I should really play with e5 there. Just to back up, to show the position after e3. If he had played e3 instead of c4, and I tried the same trick, he could just take it, and if I go in with the check, he can block with the c-pawn. So that's the difference. The c-pawn has gone forward too far, and it can't move back to block the bishop. But here, this is very convenient to block the bishop with the pawn. I retreat. White holds on to the extra pawn, and that's all good for white. So that's why c4 is a bit of a mistake here. And my move knight f6 is a mistake too, just because I wasn't taking advantage of the opportunity when I had it. So let's see, he went e3 here, although the chess engine prefers the move a3 at this point to prevent a later bishop b4 check, I guess. Oh, it's not happening immediately. Anyway, I went with e6. Once again, I could play e5, and this time as a pawn sacrifice. The bishop this time is shut out from this diagonal, so I can deliver the check here, and the king has to move. But I don't know if this is really enough compensation for the pawn, so I don't know if I would have played that way anyway. But that was an interesting line the chess engine turned up. So I went e6 here, and he goes knight e2. I think white is better in this position, and has been probably, except for the mistakes, of course, has been better ever since I decided to play knight d7 instead of defending my knight up on e4. Anyway, let's see, I go bishop d6. He plays g3 here. I thought that was a little bit funny, but the chess engine didn't mind too much. I mean, that bishop I could think of trying to trap that bishop. It doesn't have any way to retreat now, but it can always trade itself off. So white has to be a little careful that the bishop doesn't get into trouble. But this does also allow this bishop to come out here and put pressure on the pawn. So there's some pros and cons to that move. But overall, it doesn't seem to be too big a problem. I went ahead and castled here. He goes bishop g2. I go c5. I didn't really see any way to hold on to that pawn in the long run, so I'm sort of just ignoring it and continuing with my development. Let's see, he chose to exchange at this point. And I want to play this c6 move so I can create some space on the queen side and have a way to develop my bishop here. And then he played d takes c5, so that seems to be a mistake. If he were to just continue with some normal development like knight to c3, now he's threatening to win that pawn. If I try to hold on to it with queen c6, let's see, he can play b3 first, shoring up his pawns over here. I might go like this. And, this is a position which favors white, but it's probably still playable for black. But overall, white is better. Actually, I think the chess engine gives white as much as a +1 advantage as if white has won the pawn already. It's still, black is still causing some trouble here, so it doesn't look that simple to me. But in any case, that is better for white and better than what he played, which is pawn takes pawn here. This kind of equalizes. I take, and he's left with these weak pawns on the queen side. He defended with queen c2. This actually doesn't work. I could already play b5, which is an idea I hit on later in the game, but b5 right here is effective. His queen is not protected there, and so there's a pin, and I can already exploit that and get my pawn back, and that would lead to an equal position. Let's see, I went to b6 here. He took on e4 at this point, so he's got that pawn up. And interestingly, I wondered about whether I should take. One idea with taking is that the queen and the rook are on this diagonal. So if I can get my bishop here in a hurry, then that should be good for me. But I have to save my rook first. And what the chess engine points out here is an intermediate move that I missed. And this is a nice little tactic. Queen to b4 check, throwing this check. Knight c3, blocking the check. But the point is this is set up kind of a double attack. After rook b8, I have two threats in the position. One is this threat with the bishop, and the other is I'm just threatening to take the pawn on b2. So the chess engine recommends castling, and I grab here, and that's about an equal position. So that's another way for me to get to equality from this point. It was, so like I said, I was wondering about this position, but I missed the idea of queen b4 check as an intermediate move to set up that double threat. Pretty interesting tactic. So I just went rook b8 immediately. I didn't bother with the trade since I couldn't see any advantage to it, and so he dropped his bishop back. Put my bishop on a6. So now I've got my sights focused on this pawn, the c pawn. He defends it. And I played rook b to c8. It's actually stronger here to play b5. He can take, and then I take back. And this is kind of an awkward position for white. He's a pawn up at this point. He's got two pawns on the queen side versus one, but he can't castle because that would leave the knight hanging. Let's see, if he moves the knight, which is the recommended move, hitting my queen, I can move my queen with tempo, and then wherever the queen goes, I can actually just take the b-pawn. So I get the pawn back in that line as well. Anyway, I went rook b c8. I was still trying to work on this pin here along this file, but he has a nice way to escape it, and he should have played this move. He should have moved a queen with tempo, coming out and attacking my loose bishop, and that gets him out of trouble and actually gets to keep all of his material at this point. So that was a big oversight on his part. He just defended with b3, but that doesn't actually work all that well, and I pushed on with b5. So now we're back in the range of about even. right here he should probably just castle and give up the pawn, and the game would continue, like I say, about even. Instead, he played this funny move, bishop to f1. You know, he's trying to, I guess, reinforce his pawns on the queen side, hold on to his material at any cost. But this is probably losing. Well, it certainly is losing with good play. He had one chance coming up, so there's still a little back and forth in this game. Anyway, I grabbed the pawn, played knight d4. So that was his idea, setting up this pin. I have a loose bishop here still, so the pawn is pinned. But now I discover or take advantage of this check, which has been sitting here in the position. That's one of the problems with not developing, is your king is often exposed to these checks, which give tactical opportunities to your opponent. So with this move, I can defend the bishop with tempo. Let's see, he blocked with the queen. I went ahead and traded. This unprotects my bishop, but at the same time, it's leaving his king a bit exposed, and I get to bring another piece into the game, knight e4. He went king to e1. Sorry, not d1. He went king to e1, and then I just dropped my knight back to d6, defending this pawn. I was just going to try and hold on to that extra pawn. Actually, even stronger for me. This has the chance that white has to get back in the game. The way I keep a winning edge is by kicking the knight here. And if the knight moves, then I can grab this pawn. And, you know, it's true my bishop is hanging, but also the knight is hanging. So that turns out well for me. And if he counterattacks, then this line also works well for me. I grab his knight, he grabs a knight, and I take. And this time, my bishop is hanging, but his rook is hanging. And this also works out okay. Let's see, rook d1 to attack my pawn, and d3 introduces some tricky ideas here. If he grabs the pawn, I just keep taking. And you might think there's no big deal because I have this check. He can come back and block, so I don't win anything right away, but then I get to push my pawn forward, and I'm actually going to get a queen here. So so this is all very dangerous, and so just pressing forward with e5 is the right way to play this position, and it's certainly winning. For black, dropping with my knight back to d6 gives white one last chance to get to an even position, which he could get to by just taking here. He takes, I take, and like I said, this is about even. Instead, he went knight f3. I'm not sure what he was thinking. Maybe he's wanting to reposition the knight somewhere where it could attack the pawn. Maybe going here. But it does put the knight on a diagonal where it can get skewered here. And let's see, he unpinned where it gets pinned. He unpinned with bishop g2. I go ahead and take here because my rook is defended, so this is all fine. He goes ahead and exchanges. His rook was under attack. And then he brings his king forward with king d2. That's not the best way to play it because that gives me that immediate check. But even if he were to take here, that's the best move. I still get my rook down to the 7th rank here. And this is, well, the material is even, but the chess engine rates this as a win for black. It's just kind of a dominating position. His pieces are all tied up, and I can probably mop up some of this weak pawn over here on the queen side. So that would have been best play. He went king d2. That allows me to get my rook to the 2nd rank here with tempo. Let's see, he dropped back to d1, took here, played king c1, stopped this pawn from coming forward. I grabbed here, and he just resigned. At this point, he's going to lose some more material along the diagonal. There's no way to really hold everything together. So anyway, it was a fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you later.